I read this. This is the G.I. Joe Compendium One. Compendium One. Look at how thick this thing is. Boom. This is a big book. This is close to 1,200 pages. This is the first 50 comic books of G.I. Joe. So the original run when it began and the first 50 comic books all in one. I learned a lot. I just did a video about Cobra and how, how much I like the kind of fantastic wildness of it and the weirdness of it. And so this video and this compendium is going to be kind of the complete opposite of that. This is more about G.I. Joe's roots, how everything started. And I just kind of want to maybe touch on a few of the major storylines that, maybe a lot of you already know, things that I didn't know or I knew a little bit about. First thing I learned was the story of Quinn and Dr. Venom. They were kind of intertwined a couple times. Quinn is kind of like one of these real like appreciated characters that didn't really stick around very long, didn't have a lot of figures made. I've heard other people kind of talk about Quinn and how much they like him and stuff, and I didn't know that. I didn't have an opinion about it. I just didn't know Quinn. He's an Eskimo guy. He worked for Cobra, but he was more like a guy for hire, mercenary, or somebody just kind of goes out and runs a job, and he gets a contract in place with Cobra. He reads through the contract. He understands the contract very well and sticks to that. But he also has like a code of honor. So he fulfills his contract, and fulfilling the contract is also part of doing the right thing to him. So you could tell that he is a very reasonable person. And as long as it doesn't, conflict with his operation or his mission or whatever he's working on, he can be open-minded. And he and Snake Eyes ended up on the opposite sides of the fence for a while, and they were with Dr. Venom. They were all kind of trapped in this bunker that was underwater and filling with water, and they were all going to die. And Quinn and Snake Eyes kind of made a kind of a gentleman's bond here where we're just, hey, let's do the right thing together. Let's work together so we can both live. I mean, despite the reasons that we're here or our kind of goals, we both want to live. So let's work together. They ended up escaping and going on a little bit of a road trip together. And they had kind of this little kind of special moment between the two of them. So there was like an unspoken respect between the two of them. And then Dr. Venom was just a real like vicious kind of scumbag scientist that worked for Cobra. And he's just a real bad guy. There was many times, he could have just been cool and, hey, I'll work with you guys too. But no, like it never left his mind that he wants to kill both these guys and he's going to take any opportunity he can. It doesn't matter. And he develops this serum, this chemical or this virus that he wants to, infect the whole world with. And he's a bad dude. He's a very bad guy. And then there was the brainwave scanner, which is another big storyline that, I knew, bits and pieces of, maybe here and there a little bit, but I never really read it and knew much about it. Dr. Venom invented the brainwave scanner. It's kind of like an interrogation device. You get somebody locked up into this thing and you connect them to the scanner, and whatever is in their mind will show up on this screen. So if someone's, holding a secret or hiding something, all you got to do is kind of wait them out and it'll cross their mind and you can see it right on the screen. Dr. Venom invented that, and then Dr. Venom was killed, but the brainwave scanner stayed around, and Dr. Mindbender used it later on, and it is part of G.I. Joe history. Next thing, it would be the silent issue. The silent issue is about Storm Shadow kidnaps Scarlet, takes her back to Cobra headquarters, and then Snake Eyes breaks in and extracts her, and the two of them escape. That's really all it is, but it's a whole comic with no dialogue. It's a silent issue. And it's also kind of about the rivalry between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. So there's those two guys' rivalry is just awesome. That's probably one of my favorite things in G.I. Joe. And people always say, oh, one of my favorite things. And one of your favorites can mean like 20th or something. But no, I mean probably like top 3 things. Like I really do like that. The other thing that I read about in the compendium was the whole flashback of Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and Stalker in Vietnam. For anybody that doesn't know, those 3 were at war together. They were a team. They go back. This is when Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were on the same side, and they were much younger men. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in particular, were close buddies. And in the comic, Storm Shadow mentioned a couple times, hey, my family, we have this martial arts program, and we run the Ashrakaj. That's our family business. When and if we make it out of here, you have a standing invitation to come join anytime you want. You're my man, and let's do this. You can come work with my family, and we'll help train people to become ninjas together. Later on, Snake Eyes does show up, and also Storm Shadow saved Snake Eyes. There was a battle. There was shots fired, and they had to leave the area quickly. And Snake Eyes was hurt, and Storm Shadow went back and saved them. So those guys really do have a real strong bond, and they got a deep and rich backstory, and they've been through a lot together. So while I really love Storm Shadow being a bad guy, and I love Snake Eyes being a good guy, I really like it a lot when those two end up working together or seeing eye to eye, even if it's just for this mission or this issue or this episode. I do like it when those guys work together. And then I saw the first appearance of a lot of guys all through the first 50 issues, but Zartan is one of note for sure. He comes in and he's like, here, this is my cabin. And then he does his illusion thing, and all of a sudden the cabin turns into this high-tech headquarters. You learn that he, has some sort of chameleon-like properties where he can change his appearance and adapt and change the appearance of other things. And over the next, several issues, I see him changing the appearance of vehicles and himself. And it's cool just to kind of see Zartan come in for the first time. I learned about Fred, the Crimson Guard, that there are multiples of it. As far as I know, there's at least 7 different Freds. And I only really got to the second one, but I can kind of guess how it goes from here on out, because in the city of Springfield, which is like a Cobra town, they just kind of zeroed in on this one family and this one house, but you get the feeling that it's almost every house basically. But there's this family, there's Fred and his wife, and Fred is a Crimson Guard, and then they have 2 kids. They're posing as just regular civilians, but he's got all kinds of recording devices and spy equipment and all kinds of stuff in his house. And the wife is totally in on it too, and the kids are even in on it too. Eventually, Fred gets killed. And the next day, another guy who looks like him shows up at the house and was like, hey, call me Fred. I'm your dad. I'm your husband. As far as anybody else is concerned, this family is still whole and fully functioning, and that's kind of the point of it. I learned who Billy is. I learned a lot about Billy, and I know there's a lot more to learn about him beyond these first 50 pages, because in here he's really just like a child, and I know he grows up to kind of go on and do lots of other things too. So in Compendium 2 and 3, I'm going to learn more as time goes on. He is Cobra Commander's son. We learn Cobra Commander has a son, and that's Billy, and Billy does not like his dad, and Anyways, Baroness and Major Blood kind of reel Billy in, and the three of them conspire to kill Cobra Commander. They kind of prepare Billy to shoot Cobra Commander. Billy's in the Boy Scouts, and he's got a bouquet of flowers, and he's supposed to give it to Cobra Commander, and then the last second pull out a gun and shoot him. It doesn't work, of course. Cobra Commander is still here. But they lock Billy up, and they're trying to interrogate him and figure out like who he's been working with. And the Baroness and Major Blood are certainly sweating about this. They don't want to get caught. But yeah, he's in a cell, and Storm Shadow sneaks into the cell, breaks Billy out, and then the two of them both leave. Storm Shadow is training Billy all the ways of the ninja. So he's turning Billy into, quite a fighter who can handle himself, and he's making him into a ninja. And he's a kid, but he's learning all this stuff. He's absorbing it. There was another cool issue that featured Ace and the Sky Striker, which I'm sure the toy was, just hitting the shelves. So this is why they did this. But Ace and the Sky Striker, they're talking about, oh, the Sky Striker's amazing. He can do this and this and this. And him and Lady J go up and take a test flight. And then Wild Weasel has the Rattler, which is another new plane that Cobra has just developed that can do all these amazing things. And Baroness goes for a ride with him. So now I understand why Baroness would come with a Rattler too, by the way, for the HasLab. Both planes are flying around. They end up crossing paths with each other and having a sky battle between the two of them. It's very cool. They're both, neck and neck the whole time. One outmaneuvers the other, and then that one, kind of gets the advantage on the first one. And they just go back and forth. They use up all their missiles firing at each other, and then they have to switch to the gun on the front of the plane. They both run out of ammo at the same time. Both planes are in flight, but still real beat up. Ace can't see through his cockpit. The glass is all shattered. The planes are on fire and all just busted up and took all kinds of damage. And they both run out of ammo at the same time. And you see them both like nod to each other and kind of say like a good game, basically. And then they split and go back home separately. And in each plane, Lady J, is complaining to Ace, what the hell, you done? You just going to leave that like it is? We got to go back and finish this. And he's like, no. And then Wild Weasel's dealing with Baroness saying the exact same thing. And but it's a cool moment. Another one of those just moments of respect, where they're on two different sides of the fence. It ended in a draw, and they both accept the outcome. It's cool. I witnessed Dr. Mindbender, his first appearance. I saw a lot of guys' first appearances, but I want to mention Dr. Mindbender because they called him Dr. Brainwave for maybe 2 pages, and then they just started calling him Dr. Mindbender and never acknowledged it or mentioned anything about it. And then they called him Dr. Brainwave again once at the very end of the book. And never said anything about it. So I don't know what that is. That seems like maybe his name was originally Dr. Brainwave, and then they did a search and replace and missed a couple of them or something. I don't know. But yeah, Dr. Mindbender was called Dr. Brainwave briefly at the very beginning. Another good story was the death of the Hardmaster. Real quick, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes now are training at the Ashrakaji School of Martial Arts, and they're both very high ranking now. They've both learned a lot. The Hardmaster is kind of favoring Snake Eyes over Storm Shadow, and the Hardmaster is Storm Shadow's uncle. There's a Hardmaster and the Softmaster, and they are kind of the elders of the clan, and the Hardmaster is kind of leaning towards Snake Eyes, really, to be the next kind of head of the clan. And Storm Shadow is very jealous of that, and that's the whole reason that these two, or that Storm Shadow at least doesn't like Snake Eyes. That's what started it all. And then he ends up going on to join Cobra, and Snake Eyes ends up in G.I. Joe, and now, of course, they're definitely at odds. But It was, from Storm Shadow's point of view, it was like, this is my family, and this is, I was born into this, and this is what I care about, is taking over this place and just being like the best ninja I can be. And I want my family to, um, I don't know, be proud of me and teach me everything they know so that I can carry on this tradition. And then his like best friend comes in and they kind of like him better. Yeah, hey man, that's tough. I certainly feel for Storm Shadow in that case. One of the lessons that they were learning in this issue was that Storm Shadow in particular has this talent for being able to hear something through the walls. And, like someone can be on the other side of a wall and he can shoot an arrow through the wall and hit the person. He has the ear that sees, they say. So anyway, Snake Eyes and the Hardmaster are talking. They're behind a wall, and an arrow comes through the wall and kills the Hardmaster. And for a long time, everybody assumes it was Storm Shadow because he's jealous and he doesn't like the way things are going with this. And that's his talent. Later on in the series, though, we find out that it wasn't Storm Shadow. It was Zartan. Zartan is also a marksman with the bow and arrow. He has the capability to change his appearance and take on the look of Storm Shadow, pull off this move, then escape, and Storm Shadow gets blamed, which is exactly what happened. But later on in the series, Storm Shadow kind of finds out the truth, and he goes and finds Snake Eyes. Hardmaster was our mentor and my uncle, and let's get him. So the two of them like go on a mission to get Zartan. And then I also saw the creation of Serpentor, which I was familiar with that for sure because they do a big I think it's 5 episode series in the cartoon. In the comics, it went pretty quick actually, but it's still the same story. Dr. Mindbender comes up with the idea to extract DNA from a bunch of different leaders from history, and they go and they steal their bodies from their tombs all over the earth, and then they bring them back to Dr. Mindbender's lab, and he, takes their DNA and makes Serpentor. And actually, Storm Shadow's DNA is in there as well, because at the time, Storm Shadow was shot, and they thought he was dead. And then Serpentor comes out, and he's this awesome war general, and he gets shot in the arm, and he sticks his knife in the fire and cauterizes the wound. The troops really like that, and everybody's very impressed with him as just on the ground battle leader. The plan works like a charm, basically. He's like a great leader right off the bat, and everybody's very inspired by him and loves him. Baroness is even a little curious and kind of interested in him. And then the last thing that I learned, which I thought was the coolest thing that happened, was the creation of Cobra Island. There was a sunken ship on the bottom of the ocean with a big hole in it, and Cobra kind of set up a base inside of it. The way it was built, or the way it sank, there was like still a bunch of air trapped in there, and they just, I don't know, they managed to make a living space out of it, and it was kind of like their headquarters for a little bit, and they would travel in and out by submarine. And then the Joes found out about it, and the Joes bombed this ship sunk at the bottom of the ocean. But that was Cobra's plan, was to dupe the Joes into bombing it. They didn't have the necessary firepower to do it themselves, so they needed the G.I. Joe team to bomb them, because really there's a fault line right in this area too. So by the Joes just blowing up this fault line, it shook everything up, and it kind of, it ruptured the ocean floor there, and a big land mass rose up out of the water and stayed up. And now this is Cobra Island. And they chose this spot as well because it's at least 3 miles off the coast of any nearby country, and it's in, like uncharted waters. And by creating a landmass here where there wasn't one, and a landmass that wasn't claimed by anybody, they were able to legally claim it and get sovereignty and be known as their own official state. So now Cobra Island is officially recognized by the world. They have the right to have their own currency and their own laws and everything. So, and then they got the sovereignty approved like really quick too, because G.I. Joe figured out what was going on and they're trying to attack them and just clear them off this island. Cobra held their position, and then the sovereignty was approved and G.I. Joe legally had to leave the island. So that's how Cobra Island was made and the story behind it. All right, well, that's the compendium. I bought this on Amazon as soon as it came out, but now I think it dropped down in price. It was originally like 55, 60 bucks. Now it's like 35, I think. I want to say something around there. So if you're interested, it's on Amazon. And then Compendium 2 is just went up for a pre-order. It won't actually come out till like October, so you got plenty of time. Okay, so in closing, I learned a bunch about the original story of G.I. Joe and, kind of what it was like in the beginning. And yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. All right, well, hey, thanks again for watching, you guys. G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe.